Hello, everybody. Welcome to Instrumental Breakthrough Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Shankin, also known as Sita Ramdas. I am I'm your host, and Instrumental Breakthroughs is a project of Tam Integration, which offers psychedelic preparation, integration, harm reduction, and education all over the world. So if that's something of interest to you, you can go to tamintegration.com. It's also a great place to support the podcast at tamintegration.com/donate or at patreon.com/tamintegration. I would like to thank our tech guys, live stream remote. Really appreciate everything you do. And Brian at Deadhead Land. Thank you, Brian, for hosting not only us, but a wide variety of musicians and entertainment that has been such a resource and a refuge for those of us stuck at home in these times. Really, really appreciate everything that you do. And I'm very, very pleased to be able to introduce our guest today. Our guest is Natalie Carol of the Los Angeles-based band Valley Queen. The band has drawn comparisons to Neil Young and My Morning Jacket and has recently released their acclaimed Destroyer EP this year. It is the follow-up to their 2016 singles In My Place and High Expectations, which were released via Canvasback Music and Atlantic Records. NPR's Music's Bob Boilen stated, "At first, it was simply the voice that shook me. Valley Queen's music is rich with nuance and depth, rooted deep in California country." Welcome, Natalie.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here today.
And so you're the voice that shook Bob Boilen.
I don't know who Bob Boilen is. I think you mean Bob Boilen. And I'm kind of bummed out because I think we sent you a very old bio. We put out the Destroyer EP like 3 years ago.
Oh, well.
And we have since put out a full-length record. I don't know who was asleep on the job for the
Me.
bio, but
no, that was me. I just grabbed it. I Googled you and I grabbed off the thing that I found.
Oh, well, to be fair, you asked us for that, and I guess we didn't send it to you. So I'll take responsibility for that.
No. I mean, it's entirely possible that you sent it and I didn't see it. So, well, neither of us can be fired. So
Whatever.
I guess it's all good.
That's right. We're here. I'm live from Glendale in the back of my car, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you're looking good.
Thanks.
So as you know, this show is called Psychedelic Origin Stories of Your Favorite Rock and Roll Superheroes. And today that rock and roll superhero is you. Yep, raise the roof of the CRV.
I don't feel like a rock star superhero today, but I do feel better that you just called me that.
Yeah, no, we're all, I just think that there's a whole worldwide contingent of people watching this show who are like opening their hearts to hold you in that space.
I like that. I feel that.
And if you are watching and listening right now, even if it's in the future, right, would you just open your hearts through quantum space and time and just shower Natalie with all of that love and appreciation?
Love it. What a blessing, Daniel. Thank you.
Nice. So that said, will you tell us about perhaps your psychedelic origin story?
Yeah. I feel like the first time I was actually telling somebody this story last night. My first encounter with psilocybin, I had moved from Arkansas to California and really didn't know much about it and was just kind of like plopped into the ether that is Los Angeles from Little Rock, and had not really had a lot of experiences with it beforehand. And so, classic California experience. I find myself at Coachella the first year that I moved here when I was 18. And I was just given a handful of mushrooms and I just like put them all in my mouth and not understanding their power at all. And I don't think I spoke for like 12 hours. And that was kind of my first encounter with psychedelic experience, and I was really scared. And I think that that's probably normal for the amount that I took. And I also think that there's something really beneficial about that experience. I think I was probably coming up with my own shadow stuff. I don't know. People are kind of deterred from these experiences because I think that they're really scared, but I think that there's something to kind of be learned from those experiences, and then that moment passes, and you're able to kind of break through to a deeper experience of it that's not so scary. But I guess that's like the short answer. I don't know if that's necessarily the most powerful experience that I've had on them, but that was the first
Mm-hmm.
like physical encounter with it, I guess.
Well, do you feel like you gave us this overview? We come up against things that we're afraid of, and then we
Hmm.
learn something, and then maybe it's not so scary.
Right.
Do you think I could maybe gently get some details? You were there, it's 12 hours of silence
Uh-huh.
and reflection. What were some of the things that came up?
Well, there were so many people there,
Right.
and I think what happens with those experiences is like I I felt my heart open up, and like as we were saying before the podcast started, like you kind of I feel like you tap into your like love reservoir. And I think I was so overwhelmed because there are so when you're in when you're having that experience, you can kind of see everyone as like the children of the universe that they truly are. And when there's that many people, I was overwhelmed by the mass of humanity, and
Mm,
everybody is in this dance of their own experiences, and I'm walking through, and everybody, it's so crowded, and it almost kind of mimics like a stream, and everybody's kind of like fishes that I'm passing, but everyone is living in like these storylines of their own lives. And I was just overwhelmed by all of the different um, life stories that are taking place at the same time, all the time. Like these beautiful dramas happening that I know nothing about. Um, that was present. I I don't know. I can't even really say. I was thinking about that before this podcast too. It's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to articulate. I
mhm,
think the reason why I'm drawn to these experiences is that it's something beyond language. And the moment that I try to really adhere these experiences to language, I feel like
mhm.
they're already kind of gone. And
Right.
maybe that's kind of telling you what that experience was like too, the transience of everything.
Mhm.
And
Well,
yeah,
do you
so I
want to
was
know a
aware of
little bit
that.
of a secret about like why we're doing this podcast like this?
Please.
Is because that's true, what you said about like the way that we can't speak about things. Like we can't speak about this. It's super difficult and it is moving
Yeah.
so fast. I love, the visual of the stream of humanity and the
Mhm.
transience of it all. So
Mhm.
that's real. But then on the other hand, we have musicians and poets who are like
Yeah.
really good at talking about things that can't be talked about.
Mm.
So I was like, what if we get those two together and see, see see what we come up with. And so I'm kind of curious, like how this stuff does kind of come through your music.
Well, I think that that's why I really love music so much, because um it's not necessarily, and that's also something that I think that these experiences have given me. It's really changed my relationship to sound, and using sound as like a tonal conduit. Like I'm a lyric writer, I'm a songwriter, I'm always thinking about words, you know, but I think something about these experiences that I've had is it's changed it. It can bring a spatial awareness to
Hmm.
where the way that I heard sound and the way that I process sound, I feel like it gave me like an acuity in that. And going back to like the intention behind sound, um to where I'm thinking about language, and yes, I'm thinking about song structure, but even more so I'm thinking about music as sound and what I'm transmitting through
Mm.
the um w- what consciousness I can gain through the sound and then transmit out. So it's like I'm thinking about like, and I do think that these experiences have led me to a deeper understanding in this way. Like when I'm singing now, I'm coming more from a place of like, am I singing from like for lack of a better term, am I singing from my asshole through my mouth? Or am I singing like just through my throat and through my mouth? So much as to say, like, am I using my body as a vibratory
Hmm.
instrument that like can I feel the sound like vibrating my tummy?
Hmm.
Because I think that that's going to be sending that's a different kind of sound, and that's like now you're really getting into like the power of music and sound. And there's a lot more I could say about that, but I don't want
Right.
to get too tangential here.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was just about to ask about your diaphragm.
Mm,
Like you probably have a strong relationship with, because I think I have a sense of what you're talking about, is that sometimes you do, and I sometimes notice when I'm doing it, I'm just speaking out of my head
uh-huh.
as opposed to moving from the depths of my belly. And I think it was, yeah, you were just saying that you sometimes process things through crying, and I think a
Mm,
lot of us do. And from one of the things that I've noticed is that, you know, the so I can have so much tension build up in my diaphragm, and it can almost get
mm,
frozen, you know, or hypertonic, you know, just like a fist. And something like a really good cry or a really good session of laughter can free the diaphragm, which can
uh,
then enable me to speak more from my guts or my heart.
yeah. I think that that is right on. And I think that that's also, you know, I've just been thinking about it a lot since you guys have asked me to be on this podcast. And I've just been thinking about all these experiences that I've had. And um, especially in 2020 and the year being what it is, and we're just processing so much, you know, there's just so much to think about. And it's like, it's so emotional. And I think it's so natural for us to like armor up because there's just so much at play. It's overwhelming. And we armor up with people and we don't even know that we're doing it. We're just trying to survive and we're scared. Um, and I was just thinking back to an experience that I had with some old friends. You know, we got a house in the desert and we were able to um, just microdose some psilocybin. And wow, like what a gift and what a blessing that was for us to be able to come together and feel safe and have everything that we needed and surround each other. And we all, at first, yeah, it was just crying, it was just tears. And it was so, you know, you can cry without these things, of course, but this subconscious armor that you put on, and then you're able to just, it helps you to just like take it off for a moment and be witnessed by people that you know love you and you know they support you, and you're reminded that you're cradled by the people in your life that love you and are here to support you. And then like I left feeling better. I'm like, that helped. That helped me. So yeah, that was just another thought that came to mind when I thought about being on this podcast. I think I'm speaking pretty divergently now, but it's a little tidbit there.
I don't think, well, I mean, how is it possible that love is divergent?
Mm.
Right? Is that we need to show up for each other and love one another? Like, how is that at all tangential whatsoever? It's basically like the core of everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can probably see, and I also think it's really interesting because sometimes you hear about, you know, there's the archetype of like the tortured artist,
Yeah.
right? That is like misunderstood and isolated and alienated. And I think that it's also really nice to be able to bear witness to artists who are connected,
Mm.
you know, connected to their spirituality and connected to their community and connected to like their heart, and who are actually in some ways understood and able to be celebrated, you know. And it's like, to what to what extent are we able to be creative from that place of connection as opposed to from a place of disconnection?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I feel both of those things. And I think that that's also like I feel like I'm sometimes the isolated, tortured artist. And then
Mhm.
sometimes I'm able to live in the understanding that I am always loved and always supported. And I don't really
Mhm.
need to worry about anything. So I'm oscillating through those experiences moment to moment.
Right.
But to have these abilities to kind of come back to that love space, it's like it sustains you and can
Right.
help get you through those other moments that are going to come where you're like, I feel lost, I feel isolated, I feel like there's really no rhyme or reason to any of this.
Right.
Because that's going to happen again, you know, those
Mhm.
thoughts come up, but it's like, and then they pass, and that's also like the nature of what we're talking about here, I think.
Right. That's probably, I mean, that's definitely a more complete picture and a more honest
Mm,
assessment. Um,
mm,
and I do think that it's really important to recognize that, you know, half the point of, you know, sitting in our strength, you know, sitting in that place of love and connection is so that we can heal and show up for the parts of us that feel alone, and for our family members, you know, who feel alone. Um, you know, there's that
yeah,
old Ram Dass quote, "We're all just walking each other home."
yeah,
You know, and it's kind of like sometimes it's your turn to carry the heavy backpack, and sometimes it's not.
that's right. Well said.
Hey, thanks. So you, one of the things we were talking about um, was you had you wanted to talk a little bit about Neil Casal, who is, you know, well loved by the viewers of this podcast. He's well loved by me, and it's, you know, we're still mourning.
Neil, we love you, Neil. We hear you, dude. We love you. Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I told you that I was gonna have some questions for you because I think I love, you know, I hadn't heard of you guys before, but I've been looking into it more now that I was invited to be here today, and I'm so glad that I'm here. And yeah, I was talking to my manager about Tam Integration, and she was like, she was telling me Mount Tam is located um, in or around Stinson Beach, and I know that there was, you know, the Grateful Dead moved to Stinson Beach, and what I wanted to know, and what you were starting to answer before the podcast started, but I just kind of wanted to hear, like, what is the connection between what you're doing and like the history of the Grateful Dead, or just that band as an entity. And you told me like you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Grateful Dead. And what does that mean exactly?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's not necessarily, to my knowledge, they, I'm not sure that Bobby or Phil or Billy have any idea that Tam Integration exists. So
Mm-hmm.
we can put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
But, my kind of spiritual path and spiritual awakening was sort of fueled by Grateful Dead shows and by doing psychedelics at Grateful Dead shows. And then after Jerry died, Phil and Friend shows and further shows and things like that, and other similar bands and festivals. And even spending some time at home just listening to Pink Floyd, which was a different,
Mm.
totally different geography, but still was in heavy rotation when I was a teenager and a young adult. Hold on, I think there's a baby was trying to get in.
That was a happy sound.
Yeah. So I started recreationally, I mean, and with some desire for mind expansion, right? Not really know what that meant, but that was a term that I had heard. Oh, the drugs will expand your mind, and that
Mm-hmm.
sounded cool. And I had my parents' records, you know, uh, the Sergeant Pepper's and things like that. And so at some point of after recreational use for a while, it kind of got turned on its head and said to me, "Oh, this is the work you have to do." It was almost like a coming of age. It was like, "We're glad you had fun. Now you've got to do
Mm.
some work."
Mm.
And that just sort of came to me at like Oakland Coliseum, just like during trucking or something like that, trucking. And I was like, "Oh, this is the work I have to do." And I kind of recognized that we were all connected, right? There's a deep interconnection, a deep possibility for love, a deep possibility
Mm.
for service, a possibility to do things like heal the planet, whatever that may make the world a better place. And also this recognition that there was like a lot of work that I had to do on myself to be able to actually do that. Right? That
Yeah.
like I wasn't going to be able to carry, like you're saying, a vibration of love that was sufficient enough to do what I wanted to do in the shape that I was in. And
Wow.
so what did that work look like? And for me, it looked like doing a lot of yoga practice and a lot of meditation practice and kirtan and chanting and things like that. And sort of showing up on that level, doing a lot of, service work, volunteer work and things like that. Things to, create a greater sense of like altruism and selflessness. And
Mm.
also, there was psychedelics can also, at the same time, psychedelics can kind of be confusing. And well, and I just want to say that those things were I think, part and parcel of the ethos of the Grateful Dead,
Okay. Yeah.
right? So to bring it back to that. And so so there was also a part of me that felt like I was sort of trying to live up to carrying a torch of some kind, to sort of fulfill that. We kind of saw that it's very easy to have those kinds of experiences and then sort of slip back into um, survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? That those things can be forgotten and sort of pushed to the side, and maybe it only becomes lip service.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to happen to me, right? I don't think anybody necessarily wants it to happen to them. But anyway, years later, as I was just doing my yoga teaching and my meditation teaching and my coaching, more and more people wanted to talk about psychedelics, and more people wanted to have intentional journeys and to live those same truths. Apparently, I'm not the only one who felt this way. Um, and so this might sound kind of jerky because I'm trying to keep it short because this is about you, not me. But I also want to answer your question. But
Yeah.
so, I sort of found myself in Marin County, which is where a few of the members of the Grateful Dead live, and Stinson Beach is where you would send your mail order ticket order to the Stinson Beach post office.
Got it. Mm.
And so it's just sort of nice. And then Phil opened this restaurant in San Rafael called Terrapin Crossroads that we would hang out at, and Brian, who's our co-producer, he does a lot of live streams from there, right? So Brian was always around filming the shows. And when the pandemic hit, he sort of has done the very selfless work of kind of becoming the venue, sort of the Grateful Dead sort of family venue, the Terrapin Crossroads sort of venue. And he's booking, musicians several times a day, all donation based, by the way. So this is another plug to, maybe those of you out there, you can send Brian a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that answers your question sufficiently, or at least sufficiently for now, or if it raises even more questions.
Well, I feel like I have a better understanding of your connection to the Grateful Dead, and you're a part of Tam Integration, which is maybe that's getting to the heart of what I was asking. So yes.
Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, right.
But
Well, back to you and Neil, maybe then.
yeah, I think that there's a definite Grateful Dead connection between that Neil has, and then I feel like well, what do you want to know about Neil exactly, or my relationship to him? That
Sure.
story I told you before the podcast started. Yeah, well, I was at I went to Hypnic one year. My friend Jessica Wright, she does a lot. Maybe you've met Jessica Wright. She does a lot of the like the backdrops. Like a lot of times it's like tie-dye backdrops and like
cool.
stage dressing.
No, but I would like to.
Yeah. Well, one thing to say about Neil, after he passed, there was a memorial for him in Los Angeles at the Fonda Theater, and Jessica did all of the stage design for that. And I will just say, I have never felt like, I don't know. This is another thing. There's a fear I have of sounding trite or cliche around these subjects. Like I'll come across as like some kind of way by using like spiritual terminology. I don't know what that is, but I want to say the spirit of rock and roll. I had never felt like there was like the most palpable sensation at his memorial, with everybody being there. Like I had never felt like the spirit of music. I hadn't felt that spirit of music in years like I did at his memorial. And they put this beautiful dressed chair, this empty chair for him on the stage as everybody performed. And you just want to talk about presence. I don't know. There was something really, really special at that show. But the first time that I had ever encountered Neil, I was definitely I was at Hypnic, a folkia festival that is the best festivals I've ever been to, up in Fernwood. And crying, I was draining my body, looking up at these huge trees by the water, and just overwhelmed by their beauty and their majesty. And just the air was so clear, and I was so aware of the air around me. And he just appeared. He came around the corner, and he saw me weeping. And he just came and just held me for a moment, and he just hugged me. And he said, take it easy, take it slow. And we just stood there for a moment in silence. And then he just walked off. And a few years later, I was in New York, and in December, and there was a blizzard. It was snowing out, and Manhattan was just covered in snow. And I saw on Facebook that Chris Robinson Brotherhood was playing down the street from where I was staying in New York.
I love when they're playing down the street.
Yeah, yeah, right. And they were playing in 30 minutes. And I wrote to Neil, and I was like, I'm down the street. And he put a ticket on hold for me. I ran through the snow and caught, like, I was there for the first song. And another really beautiful experience. And then I saw him a few years later. My band was touring through Minneapolis. And we were playing First Ave, the 7th Street entry, and Chris Robinson Brotherhood happened to be playing the main stage that night. And we got done with our sound check. I didn't know that. And I like walking through First Ave when I'm there. I just love that venue. And we can get into that too, like the sanctuaries that are music venues in this country.
Oh, I would love to.
Yeah, wow. But I was, I wanted to go do my walk through First Ave, as I usually do when I'm in Minneapolis, and there they were sound checking, and Neil sounded beautiful as usual. They all sounded beautiful. And I just sat there and watched their whole sound check. And then, yeah, that was the last time I ever saw him. But really beautiful run-ins. And yeah, he was friends with a friend that I was living with, and I had a dream about him the night before he came to the house, and they were singing Tumbleweed and Eden to, like, all of CRB was gathered around these. Oh, it was like it was so sad. It was policemen were beating these people, and they were surrounding them singing Tumbleweed and Eden. And I, like, walked through this field, and then, like, they were gone. Like, they all just, like, kind of started to, like, slowly disappear as I walked through this, like, big open field. So he's a psychedelic dude. I don't know. I think I'm not the only one that feels that way about him, but he's just a really special person that harnessed a really special sound to share with everybody.
Yeah, an amazing sound. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing all
he
that.
did. Yeah.
The reason I said, oh, when they're playing right down the street, I was in a coaching training in 2016 doing, my mindfulness-based coaching stuff. It was Asheville, North Carolina, and it just so happened to be the week of the election, the presidential election. And if you can imagine the kind of people who fly to Asheville, North Carolina to do mindfulness-based coaching, like, then think about, like, their response to the results of the election.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it was a heavy day. It was a heavy day for everybody. But it just, one of the other guys, I have a Grateful Dead tattoo on my arm. And one of these guys, I think he works for the Federal Reserve or something like that, like, walked up to me, and he whispered in my ear, and he was like, I saw your tattoo. I like the Grateful Dead also. And I was like, it's okay, man. You're allowed to. But he was like, Chris Robinson Brotherhood's playing tonight. And so we sort of, me and him escaped, we escaped, the inmates escaped the asylum and went and got to sort of, get some energy out of our system. And it was a really, really good show.
You left the mindfulness retreat. You snuck out of your mindfulness retreat
to go to Chris Robinson Brotherhood. Of course we
for
did.
some more mindfulness. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fantastic. And ate at Waffle House. So
wow. So another serendipitous CRB moment then. I'm sure there's a lot of those that have happened.
Yeah, they were just playing down the street.
Yeah.
So you were going to tell us about some of the most special, magical, transformative venues that you've had the pleasure of playing at. Or
Yeah, and
being
what
at.
comes to mind right now with, the Grateful Dead on my heart today is the Capitol Theater
Mm,
in New York.
yes.
I There's a palpable feeling at that place. Like when you walk in, like beautiful Victorian like foyer, and then you have these like huge arched mirrors that are facing each other and create this infinity effect in the front of the venue. And um you know dressed with like red velvet curtains and like gold trim, and
Mhm.
all of these posters on the wall, like so many Grateful Dead shows. In our green room there was this huge framed photo of James Taylor, like kind of like lording over the green room. I just it's a sanctuary of music, and it honors the history of music, and you can just feel it. I struggle for the language to describe it. It's simply a feeling that you have when you enter these spaces. And I also feel that way about the National in Richmond, Virginia.
Right.
It's a really old concert venue that was built like in the colonial era of America, and we still play there. And like, you can't beat the history of those places. It heightens the musical experience,
Right.
and plus they were building those spaces differently. Like you look up and there's like a dome structure, and all of the sound just goes up there and pools, and so you're like living in the sound.
Oh, you're right. And they
And
project at the Capitol, they like project these delicate lights on the ceiling and things like that.
yes, they do. Yeah. And I think when we like really honor those music venues, we are really creating like a sanctuary for, like we're living in a secular age. Like
Hmm.
as Joseph Campbell said, like we don't have any myths, we don't have a common myth anymore, and we have to kind of create our own spiritual scaffolding.
Hmm.
And I don't think our religions really, there's still so much to be gained on a personal level from religions, but they don't serve the same purpose that they used to.
Right.
And yet I think we still really crave that connectivity with each other. Like we must have it, we have to have it. And like, and what better way to see it than this year when we can't be with each other, and
Hmm.
it's made me see how much I crave to be with everyone. Like we need each other so much. And um these music venues, they're the modern day, more secularized sanctuary where you don't have to attribute any certain vocabulary or dogma to get in. You just buy a
Hmm.
ticket and it's whatever you want it to be.
That makes you
um
the high priest. That makes you the priestess.
I accept that position. Yeah.
Well, and so that's one of the things that's really nice that sort of, some bands really exemplify is that there's a mythos in the songs.
Mm,
Is that, if you people who are willing to go and see a band over and over and over and over again, to sing along and to dance along with the same songs, and to have these perhaps psychedelically inspired aha moments. Oh, that's what they meant. And then the next night the song gets played again and they're like, oh wait, that's what they meant.
yeah.
And we can see that there's this consistent kind of deepening and evolution and relationship that happens between the musicians, the audience, and the music itself.
the musicians and the audience and the music itself.
Right.
Well, I think yeah, I mean, I think the music is the connector in that. And that's also something that I feel like I've experienced is this. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm covering my camera. This idea that the you entity is something that exists both inside of your body and outside of your body on like it's a happening. And to me, the music is the connector between the you that's living inside of me and the you that's living inside of you, Daniel, and living inside of everybody that's experiencing a show. And it's just like the little glue that just seeps out with its
Mm-hmm.
little feelers and makes its way into other bodies where the rest of you is seated and connects you with it. I That's how I feel about music. You know, it's like that's a lofty philosophy, but wow, like if I don't feel that on a good night, you know.
Mm-hmm. You might as well. What's the point of a philosophy that's not lofty?
That's right.
Yes,
I like
just
that.
be boring. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to kind of shift between, sometimes it's like, okay, the music is happening to me, right? It's like it's coming and it's doing what it's doing to me. And then there's other times where I feel there, I've had moments where I feel like I must be directing all of this, right? So there's that
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
thing, but then there's
Yeah.
this sort of, but there's ego there, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this one character named Dan that for some reason it's his turn to conduct the orchestra of of Valley Queen or whatever band it happens to be, right?
Right.
And then there's this other time where it's like the thing is kind of co-creating and emerging through all of us at once. And that I think is my most fun place to be. Which is not to show any disrespect to the people who have put in the hard work of being able to hold instruments and to channel sound through the instrument of their body, right? With like all of the deep reverence for that. At the same time, it is all like sort of, you know if a tree falls in the forest.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the people that are playing those instruments probably agree with you all the more,
Mm,
because they get to play the instruments and feel that energy transfer.
right.
So,
I do have one question. It just struck me about a particular venue.
okay, which
Um,
one?
Tiny Desk. What is Tiny Desk?
Tiny, tiny desk.
What is Tiny Desk concert like? Didn't you play?
It's
Didn't you
really
play there?
sweet. Yeah, it's a very sweet place to play. And Bob is like very much the Papa Bear of that zone.
Mm-hmm.
And he just loves music so much, and
Right.
there's no doubt about that. He saw us play in South by Southwest and invited us right after our show to come on. And we're like, we'll be there. Bought
Mm-hmm.
tickets to DC. And yeah, as you're playing, this is something that you don't see watching the Tiny Desk, but as you're playing, you're looking out over the skyline of Washington, D.C.
Mm.
And Bob gets on the intercom and he calls everybody that works at NPR. He says, like, who you are, and he tells them, like, to get up there and come watch. And so it's like, it's all of NPR watching you as you,
Super
like,
cool.
sing over Washington, D.C. And yeah, yeah, really special little place.
Right. Which is interesting
Yeah.
because, it's a dichotomy between these very kind of classical venues, the National, the Cap, um, that have been around for quite some time, and the Desk, which kind of looks like, it's got like this sort of just a hoarder office kind of quirky kind of thing, almost like,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like that kind of
Yeah.
aesthetic. And it
And
creates
yeah.
this energy of just like hominess and friendliness and familiarity.
Mhm. Man, all this chat, you make me want to play a show, Daniel. Ah,
When is
I
what
miss it so much.
Right. Um yeah, what is that like? What's coming up for you?
Um, what's coming up for me internally about it?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I will say about not being able to play shows is it's really, I feel like I've come back to a place of music as like the inner cavern sanctum which I can return to for myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's something I've had the thought of a lot is like, I don't know what song it is, but like music, the notion of music being your only friend. And I don't think I've ever had to rely on music as like my inner system like I have had to do this year, like to close the door and to turn on my amp and to plug in my guitar. And for me, something that I do, and this is something that I've done since I was a child, turn off all the lights, go in the bathroom where there's reverberation, and just get swallowed in the sound and try to just surrender to being surrounded by sound and create from that place. And a lot of the writing that I feel like I've been doing recently has been through in my mind's eye, closing my eye in that environment and just singing out to everybody uh, to find that place in my heart and to make a sound from a place in my heart that is sent to everybody and to just trust that it will find them. It will find them, like months and months now when we as a band can go in and record this sound that I'm making now, I'll be able to hear it years and years from now. But just creating that sound in that moment to send out in my dark bathroom really helped to reconfigure that like ground zero for that kind of connection with people. It's just invisible little uh chords of sympathy is what I feel like I've been thinking a lot about Hazrat Inyat Khan, who was a Sufi mystic. He wrote the book The Mysticism of Sound and Music.
Mm.
And I realize a lot of the songs that I'm writing this year are talking about the chord and envisioning a chord that I send out to everybody that I mean Khan calls it a chord of sympathy, and I love that.
That's very
And
sweet.
it's just, yeah.
I did an advertisement for the Owsley Stanley Foundation.
What's that?
So are you
Oh,
familiar with
well, I'm
Owsley
sure you already
Stanley?
gave a whole spiel.
I'll
No,
do it
I
again.
haven't.
It's worthy to repeat. So Owsley was the sound man for the Grateful Dead.
Okay.
And he was also the acid cook. And so he put the same care and deliberation and heart into cooking acid as he did to sound engineering.
Uh,
And so he also invented something that you may have heard of. It's not Phil Spector's wall of sound, but it was Owsley Stanley's wall of sound, because before Owsley, you could either listen to music clearly or you could listen to music loud, but you couldn't do both. And he wanted to do both. And so he, in like the early 70s, 73, 74, built this enormous speaker system. And he would experiment with different kinds of imported woods from Italy and gold wire versus copper wire. And he would do things like, set up a few different speakers that were just responsible for one bass string, and so these kind of
what?
weird experiments that were sort of funded by his extracurricular activities. And so all of these tapes are now, and this is, we were talking about New Riders of the Purple Sage, we were talking about the Glendale Train.
Mm-hmm.
There's amazing tapes that they restored that was New Riders with Jerry and Bobby for Jerry's birthday. And so there's a bunch of reel-to-reel tapes that are living up in Sonoma County, I believe in the Alembic Bass Factory. And they are slowly crumbling, right? They're slowly sort of falling to pieces like reel-to-reel tapes will. And he is, the Elsie Stanley Foundation is, trying to digitize them.
Oh, wow.
And then, to save them. And then, in the off chance that they can deal with all of the licensing issues, they release them to people. They release them to, to you and me.
Wow.
So that's the same ad twice, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for repeating that. They should do that.
They are doing that.
They are doing that.
Yeah. It's really nice to have a journal of history, these magical, we were talking about, these vibratory qualities of being in community with music. And, can you capture that in a recording? Right. And can you, share that with people in a way that it will hit them in a certain way, that is sweet for them.
Yeah, and what's your work to make sure that the recording is good enough, but also where's that fine line where you just kind of take your hand off the wheel and just like let it do what it does,
Right.
apart from you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was a master of that.
What are you looking at on your screen?
I was looking at to see if there were any comments.
Oh, are there? What's everybody saying?
I wasn't like I'm checking my email. Let's Charles loves the podcast so much. It's interesting and inspiring. Thanks, Charles.
Yeah.
Music is the bridge between the divine and the human. Things like that.
Word.
So we were talking about you in the bathtub. And wouldn't that be an interesting venue to just create a huge bathroom for everybody to listen to music to in the dark?
Well, I think that now you have like water being brought up, which I think water is a whole other conduit for subconscious release as well. I like the idea of like, yeah. That's like my ideal show. It's like I'm just in the bathtub and you're just giving me a mic and I'm just like laying in water. Are you kidding? That would be amazing. That's a great idea, actually.
We just got to get funding for that. Maybe a record company is interested.
Well, everybody's just going live now. I just go live from the bathtub.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
So right. What are you working on? Like what does music and musicianship look like for you in these days?
Well, I think I was kind of talking about that before we were so rudely interrupted by the heat of Glendale.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think one thing that I've struggled with is I'm not a technically proficient musician, and that's not how I approach music, and that's not where I feel comfortable approaching music. And I think during my musical journey, I have always kind of seen that as a defect. But the more and more, I think what I'm really trying to focus on now, and I think that this pertains to the conversation that we're having today, really focusing on making music as just a language of the heart, more and more, and just being a language, like, like when we are children, we're all like slowly just learning English, right? Because that's just how everybody speaks. And so we're not necessarily good at English, but we're using it as a means to communicate. And we're all invited to speak English. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that you can translate that to music. Like, we all speak it, whether we realize it or not. And we're all invited to use that language in the same way that we speak English or whatever our native tongue is. So that's a very like inviting way for me to think of it. And I think the music that we're working on now is coming from that place. It's a lot of love letters. It's as I said, it's sending music out for everyone, as a sonic love letter. That's really how I think that these songs are. And it's not divorced from this conversation. It's through those experiences. It's through those quiet little moments. Um, does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. It brings up another.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, if you wanted to maybe write a quick love letter off the top of your head to the people who are listening, what do you feel like, you do want to share with people?
How about I just sing a little thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's your letter.
There's a chord of sympathy existing between us. It's the presence where we are, far-reaching distances, the howling of the dog, the forest golden dawn. In the chair where you sit, in the bed where you sleep, in the house where you live, in the food that you eat, in the clothes that you wear, as you're crossing the street, and the sound that it makes in your mouth as we meet. There's a chord of sympathy existing between us. It's the presence where we are, far-reaching distances, the howling of the dog, the forest golden dawn. Just a little tidbit.
Gorgeous.
A little chord of sympathy from my heart to yours, Daniel.
I love it. I feel it. It's resonating right back at you.
As I was singing that, there was like a siren that was like kind of wailing in the background. It was kind of nice, kind of added to it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just more vibrations.
Mhm. That's right.
How do people get in touch with you and sort of say, support you and, be able to hear more of your music and things like that?
We are on, I feel like the one that I check to connect with people on the internet is through Instagram, and that's at Valley Queen Music. That's where you can find me most often. And then our website is valleyqueenmusic.com. We're just on Google. If you type it in, the
Right.
digital Akashic Records, it's going to show you the way.
Right. And of course, I do want to suggest that people watch the Tiny Desk concert because it was really nice.
Please. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Daniel.
Yeah, it was a blast. I am really, really glad our paths crossed, that the chords and the chords brought us together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to listening to more of these episodes. And I'm so glad that I know about TAM integration now and what you guys are doing. I think it's really special and really important. And as much as I, begrudge language, I think it's really important to put language around these experiences that we're
Right.
all having.
Even if it's insufficient, it's the language is perhaps a medium by which we're able to be present for each other.
Yeah.
It's gives us a chance to be seen and heard, and to see and to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So super cool. I think if you want to stick around for a moment, I think that the gentlemen at Livestream Remote are probably going to, take us offline for a moment. We can maybe debrief for a second.
Yeah, I would
But
like that.
cool. But again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Please, find Valley Queen at the Digital Akashic Records, that is Google. Please feel free to, continue checking in with Dead Headland and with Instrumental Breakthroughs. And, we appreciate your support, and thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everybody.